Growing up as someone from the slightly lower end of a middle-class family, I had to get my entertainment system secondhand. Like I got my PS single from a fifth removed relative, and a slimline PS double from my second uncle. Though at the time I got those, the PS quadruple was already well in its middle years. But I had to be grateful for what I had, which weren't a lot, I admit, since I was only left with like 3 games for the PS single and a single game for the PS double, and also the fact that I live in a remote district of a bigger town, it was hard to get games. And the only accessible point I had to rely on were night markets that occur every Friday night, where I bought 5 PS double games from my parents and also getting scammed for the first time. Those 5 games consist of 1. An Angry Birds video game, which, yeah, I probably deserved to get scammed for that, as when I took it home it was actually the Chicken Little video game adaptation. Second was Lego Batman the video game, which I didn't get scammed and had a good time with. Third was actually the first Yakuza game, but I remembered I dropped it in the first Majima fight and couldn't make it past that. Fourth was the first Samurai Warriors, which I didn't quite like. Then finally the loosely connected topic of this video, Sengoku Basara 2, Heroes. I played the absolute shit out of that game, but that's for another time, as I'm gonna play the quote-unquote first game, that being we got 6 initial starting characters. The titular Devil King, or Argusax, since he's got some spin attacks just like the Despair embodied, literally Curious Tattoo, Star Sign, Uranus, Ebony and Ivory, then Minotauro Rojo. As you can probably read by the names, these real but extremely fictionalized historical Japanese figures have been bastardized to fit the Western ideals, making the name sound superhero-esque by giving them a once-over basic observation. Since I do know a bit of the series outside of the game, Azure Dragon, or Date Masamune, will be my first pick to play this game on normal difficulty, and we're gonna assault Bloomdale. As you can see by the UI here, the skills you can usually use by pressing triangle isn't present, it's all locked. This is because they overhauled the combat with basic and prime attacks. Pressing square is your basic string, while pressing triangle you use your prime attacks, while landing one will make the enemy health bar turn yellow. Sometimes these weird circle things happen. You can mix and match the 2 strings of attack as they're all allotted to fixed sequence. To make a comparison, it's essentially like Kurohyo's combat system where you punch with square and kick with triangle, but the difference is that your prime attacks aren't very good in practice. Now I get what they're trying to do, more or less. You start with triangle to prime the enemies and throw a regular attack to unload the stored kinetic energy into one big damage. It works wonders in large group like these, as if you set one off, it starts a large chain reaction, but on a 1v1 encounter with the boss, setting off the primer is just tiny bits of extra damage. Another thing they changed is the Basara gauge, or Fury meter here. It feels irritatingly slowly that it's faster to just take damage and equivalent to the gauge, just like another familiar game. Final thing I'm gonna talk about the gameplay is that the drops for healing items, Fury boosters, and really overall drops are lowered, so low that it's quite difficult to stay alive. This is quite the double-edged sword, as having red health increases your Basara gauge over time. Once it's full, by pressing circle, you unleash your ultimate, but in Masamune's case, you'll whip out all 6 swords and get enhanced damage. But obviously you're probably going to be a hit or 2 away from dying, which I was, and I died here due to Stray Arrow. Booted back to the title screen, I'm now gonna go over some lore aspects of the game with the lore character herself, Ichiballs. She starts off with an assassination attempt, but her dumbass decides to announce her intentions, and now she's exiled from her village and works at Uesugi Kenshin, or Frost here, to beat the Azure Dragon. Right off the bat, she's a lot better to control because of her archetype, even then though it still took a good couple minutes to beat this knockoff Dante. I mean, just listen to him.
Now, let's get this party started, huh? Bring it on, anytime. Time for a little fun.
After the beatdown, he just flees like a fucking pussy. And now we get Horsey and Horsey controls. As well, I'll take this free time to just explain what the hell this game is even about. First off, it's a Muso, set in a historical time point, so like everything in that genre, you're gonna set out to unify the historically significant land that's been fictionalized by an equally fictionalized historical figure, and also being able to pick what's essentially the second person of that party, as their job and or role in the story is to just help the main warlord, but that's Sengoku Basara. Now while Devil King has the same premise, it's been turned to something purely fictional, as the goal here is recontextualized to be about taking over the world and to take the Devil King's throne. I'll elaborate further on that purely fictional thing later on in the video, as for now I died again. I'm sorry for leading you on, as you might think this game is actually kinda hard, but no. I've been playing on the wrong difficulty this entire time. You see, just like DMC3, since the 2 came out in 2005, the normal mode of these 2 games when they were first introduced to the West is the easy difficulty. In turns, the hard difficulty is the normal difficulty here, and in this one it's particularly evil, as it defaults to pick normal. and it felt mocked to pick easy because of that. You want proof? When I initially picked Masamune, he starts off with a standard katana, but in Uranus' campaign, his katanas are sleek black. That kinda looks like sabers and or hose. Like garden hose, not that kind of hose. Now let's return on easy this time, and yep. Now, while you can beat the game with this difficulty right off the bat, some characters just kinda don't have the tools for that. The original one you can, since there's only two initial difficulties, normal and hard, where they default to normal, and you're offered to play on hard, but those have the advantages of having all characters with at least one overtuned skills. Devil King, however, outside of Ultimate, just doesn't. After all that debacle, let's tackle level design now. From your starting point, you can only choose to invade neighboring factions on a given line of the world map. And every stage has some sort of gimmick, like this one earlier where Masamune runs away. You can use the horse to catch the guy, but it's better off in the long run to beat the small fry commanders to get better items and more experience at the end of the level. After completing a mission, the other territories would raid each other, performing a 50-50 on which side would win and expand. This, if I'm not wrong, makes it so the more land the enemy has, the more health the peons are gonna get. So some may get special properties, like later on in the video. But first we're gonna raid PDD's Cum-Coated Wonderland. The gimmick of the stage are blizzard ambushes, where a shit ton of people can just spawn depending on where you go. Also, the guys here are canonically just ordinary farmers, not warriors or any of that kind, since they're fighting using farm tools. Except for the big dudes. Every warlord has those, even though Lolly P. Diddy canonically isn't one. She's actually just a random ass girl who has land that we want. I'm gonna get the gate opening as a gimmick, so you're gonna be hearing a lot of this. You also get to fight Puffy in the semi-final before cruelly taking away the home of these random ass villagers without second thought. At the end I got a new weapon and unlocked my first skill. Before commencing a siege on Dark Spire, I equipped the skill, switch weapon, equip basic stat boosting items, and we're in ancient Egypt? Quite literally, every single enemy unit has been changed to wear Anubis mask, curved blades, raws, and intricate gold blue pillars. Even the area. I remember Tojo's territory is always vibrant and filled with ninjas, so I don't know where they got ancient Egypt from that. Is it because he's old? Anyways, the main gimmick here are walls. More specifically this colossal gate, where you have to backtrack and protect some bombers to explode it wide open. Progressing further into the land, I encountered some flying enemies. I was stunned at first, but I just pushed past through it, and killed the old man for messing with time, bringing back people who were around centuries before the Sengoku period even blinked. Next we're kinda forced to fight Minotauro Rojo, since he's blocking the other land. This guy has a couple gimmicks. First there's Sanada Yukimura, a mini-boss that if you beat him, 3 goons are gonna report this to the head honcho. The game's gonna tell it to intercept that, but if you let it happen, Red Big Boss will move closer to the left side of the map instead of the very end. But, hidden in the red dot, Sasuke here is also bringing with him his bong fog, so if you aren't careful, you're gonna have to fight a double boss. Luckily though, they are spaced out enough so you can trigger the Sasuke fight and beat him first before trying the main boss. Minotauro Rojo also has special properties if you let him expand his territory further into the west, as once you beat him here, you'll only take the first part of his land and have to either fight him again, or he's gonna be taken out of the map by another warlord's army. But since he won, we're gonna have to fight him again in one of the most annoying stages in the game. Deadwood Counter-Offensive is generally one of the most annoying levels in the game, and it isn't Devil King's fault, as this level is also in the original. The gimmick of the stage is that you need to beat down an unknown amount of cavalry until the game says you can proceed, and every time a cavalry breach our defenses is one step closer to failure, while also having Sanada Yukimura trying to beat you down. After that's done, there's 3 paths ahead, and I took the far right one where I encountered some boulder fuckers, then beating Minotauro Rojo for good. Final stage for this run, and we're taking a detour to Fortuna. They didn't really change anything on the regular units, as they're already quite weird fantasy coded enough on the original release. Essentially just imagine a less grimdark Adeptus Mechanicus, as after busting down the first gate, we're fighting a Mecha Shavi. After turning that clanker to rust, we're gonna fight a Tetraprot War Machine by popping an ult, and finally using the skill of Unlock. The skill system here is odd, because you need to hold down R1 and press either square or triangle while standing completely still. It's generally kinda useless. Shavi himself fights standardly, as you've been kinda fighting him the entire time, as his mecha uses the same moveset, but once his health gets a half, he'll start spawning one as trash mobs. You can actually use this to your advantage, because every time you kill one of those, you get health and Basara meter up for more ults. We then finally unite the fictional country of Super Japan, and we did all that just for an awkward hug. And that's one aspect of the Sengoku Basara story, but I've basically covered what you'll mostly find when playing one of those early games. There is elemental properties, but you get those way late into the game, and they're kind of a non-issue to begin with, at least on this game in particular. But I do have some extra footage of the other levels, some just explaining gimmicks and some that's been completely overhauled and far removed from the original vision. Mori and Shizamo have the same gimmick, where you need to beat 6 and 16 officers respectively to make the warlords spawn on the map, with the latter being a bit more unique as it emulates a bit of guerrilla ambush tactics. Maeda's army has been changed to what I think are Vikings. Even the Tetrapod war machine is Viking themed. Akachi's stage has been completely overrun by demons, which makes sense as the man is pretty fucking evil if you know the lore, and the game's overall unusual run-ins with Devil May Cry. And then the titular Devil King has replaced all of his peons with medieval knights. Zencho Sokabe and Ieyasu are disappointing. They didn't replace the former with full-blown pirates even though the main warlord is looking like this. While in Ieyasu's level, I had expected them to replace the units with robots because of Handam. And that's kind of it for Devil Kings really. The game basically arrived half dead at the waist, and we wouldn't get any localization until the third game. So what do I think about Devil Kings? It's decent. There's a fair amount of blunders here, but it's playable. A little rough starting out, but I'm sure it gets better the more you play. Anyways, that's all for me. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, subscribe if you want to, and
Bye.